Alright, welcome to another explainer video. If you don't know who I am and you're here because this came up on your YouTube feed, I am thankful but also sorry. I don't know how that happened. I do these pretty rarely. This is only the second one I've ever done. What my YouTube channel actually is me solving crosswords. But occasionally I just get ideas in my head. I think about fascinating concepts and they just rattle around in my brain, so I decided I would just start making videos of them because then I'm just talking to the void instead of just rattling around in my head. But my last one, which was about how trumpet works, totally escaped containment. My regular crossword videos get 10 to 15 views, and that one got like 500. So if you don't know who I am and you're here, this probably got put in your feed because you're interested in geology or national parks or other things that I put in the title. And that's cool. If you want to stick around and listen to this, I appreciate that. But all I'm trying to do here is explain a topic efficiently and succinctly and coherently without getting on too many tangents. A lot of times when someone's talking about an interesting science thing, then they want to go into like all the details. And luckily I'm very amateur on geology shit, so like I can't go into too many details. But my point is to explain a video, keep it on track. If that's interesting to you, stick around. If you want real geology info, don't watch me. Watch Myron Cook. That guy rocks. I did not mean that to be a pun. That was totally on accident, but I stand by my accidental pun. Okie doke. So, as the title says, I went to actually 3 national parks recently, but I'm only focused on one. So first off, I went to Bryce Canyon National Park, which is pictured on the left. They have these beautiful structures called hoodoos, which is a fun name. And then this other image that I took is at Kodachrome Basin. You're not going to be able to read that. I'm sorry. And that's a state park. And these two are actually very close to each other. I'll show the map in a sec. And they have these, you can see I took a picture of a column at Bryce Canyon. And I took a picture of a column at Kodachrome Basin. And they both look like columns of rocks. But what I learned in my time there is that these two columns are very different from each other. And I would even say opposite of each other, and I found it fascinating, so I'm going to talk about it. But first, I will just show you the wacky thing about these totally opposite things is how close they are to each other. So this is Bryce Canyon National Park. I bet we can get more pictures of these hoodoos here. Yeah, I took a picture of one, but there's thousands of this. So this is a pretty rare feature. It only happens in a few places in the world, but Bryce Canyon has like the most of them in one place in anywhere in the world. And then the state park is just up the road. Maybe should have zoomed out a little bit, but I would say like 10, maybe 15 miles. You kind of get into this stretch here, and yeah, then suddenly you're in this state park, and not that far up the road, but just completely different structures. They look similar. They're both columns of rock, but formed completely differently. That's not a good example of one. This is a good example. So the ones at Bryce Canyon are called hoodoos, which is a great name. It's actually, I might risk going on a tangent here, but I just got to do it. It's based on like the Native American name in the area. They mistranslated it. So hoodoos in English refer to like these structures right here, these columns. But in the original word, udu refers to like a phobia or like that like sense of like awe and wonder and fear that you get seeing a cliff face, which I think that's just really neat. And then these are just called piles. So hoodoos and piles. So to get into it, I'm going to establish just 2 ideas of geology. As promised, I'm not going to get super deep into things. And I think there's 2 concepts you have to understand. iPad's going crazy because I tilted it. Oh boy. Here we go. You saw my notifications there. Let me actually just put this into locked mode for the no rotations. we're professionals here. Okay, so the first concept that you got to know that's important to geology is that just things accumulate in layers. So just sediment builds up over time. Don't ask me how that happens. A lot of times it's like when things are underwater, especially in North America. A lot of this was like under a lake or a sea, but they just layers accumulate. This is a picture of the Grand Canyon that I also went to, and you can kind of see as it goes. There's like one consistent layer of one sort of thing, and then the next one here, and then the next one here. So the layers just stack on top of each other. Older ones tend to be at the bottom and newer ones at the top. Maybe that's obvious because things stack on top of each other, but we don't want to take anything for granted. That was an intentional pun. The Grand Canyon actually had granite. Bryce Canyon that I'm talking about I think doesn't, but if you've been to the Grand Canyon, they have a really cool like walk where it progresses over time through the layers and you can touch each of the rocks. And I feel like there was like 3 or 4 different types of granite there. But none at Bryce Canyon, as far as I know. And the second concept you have to know is erosion. This is probably one that people know pretty well, but again, don't want to take anything for granted. So this is a picture that I have from the Badlands National Park, which I went to last summer. There's a theme here of national parks. Erosion is just things break down over time, mainly from wind and water, and then gravity carries it down. So here you can see the Badlands, very soft rock. It erodes very quickly. Whenever there's rain, it takes these little bits down and they flow down. Gravity takes it and it just sort of becomes this like smooth layer, as you can see here, evening out. So like the Grand Canyon is much harder rock, so it erodes a lot slower. That's going to be important to this description. So yeah, that's all you got to know. Layers and erosion. So how did we get these hoodoos that we see here? This is a collection of multiple hoodoos, and you can kind of see from this the different layers and how they form. There's clearly like one layer here, and there's another layer here, and there was probably a layer here. And that is another big hint to how this works. So what you need to know about Bryce Canyon is that there's very soft rock, much like the Badlands that we saw here. But then a weird thing happened, and don't ask me how it happened. This is beyond my level of expertise. But what you have is you have a bunch of really soft rock here in a layer. And then on top of that, you got a thinner layer of harder rock right here. Same thing happened here. You get soft rock there, and then a harder layer of rock on top. And there was probably a hard layer of rock right here. How'd that happen? I don't know, but it's just what happened at that place. So, because you have this harder rock on top of the softer rock, it's a little bit more difficult for the erosion to take grip on the softer rock. If you just have totally soft rock, like at the Badlands, it just comes down in hills, and you can even kind of see it on like these hills here that have already had the hard rock erode away and the hoodoos erode away. Then it becomes more that smooth part. But on the less eroded parts, that hard rock is sort of protecting the softer rock. So what you get, where we go. First, you get these kind of fins here. And I realize a lot of these pictures are a little pixelated. I'm using Procreate, which is like an art tool, but I like it because it can have a big canvas you can move around through. But when you get a lot of pictures in one place, they get a little pixelated. Sorry about that. But you get these fins that kind of stick out because that hard rock is protecting it as it erodes, so it doesn't all go down. It becomes those sort of narrow fins. And then, with that fin, with the hard rock protecting on top right here, the water still gets around. So what it does is it starts to form these channels, and it's moving around the hard rock and eroding the soft rock that's under it, and it sort of creates the little channels there. And as they keep going, they start to erode on each side, and you sort of get these arches or windows. They're called windows because arches are like a specific geological concept, but it's eroded on either side and it meets in the middle and it creates that little gap there. And eventually what happens is that window or that gap gets like wide enough that soft rock can no longer support the harder and heavier rock on top. So then it collapses and then you get these hoodoos. So right here you could see, oh, that's so pixelated. I'm so sorry. We're going to keep this wide. But you can imagine there was a layer of hard rock here and then it was eroding down the side and it started to get these little windows. And then like when this gap got wide enough, this part fell and it was gone. And when this gap got wide enough, this part fell. And you're left with just those columns, those hoodoos, and they stand for a while, but once the cap is gone, then they erode a lot quicker, and then you start to get a situation like this over here. Eventually the hoodoos are gone, and then you just have a flat hill. And then we have to wait millions of years for new ones to accumulate, or other ones to be uncovered. Same thing here. A lot of this, the hoodoos are just kind of gone because they've been exposed for a while. But luckily, there are thousands and thousands and thousands of those. All right, now we're going to go back to Kodachrome Basin, and you can see this pile. And I chose this picture because I think it gives a really good example. There's a few hundred of these piles throughout the parks, but here you can really see like all of this is eroding, and this little bastard is just like sticking up out of there. So you can tell right away from that, like this is not following the same rules as everything else. This is not the soft rock moving away and staying a little bit. This is a hard rock because it is not affected at all. And actually, even looking at Kodachrome Basin in general, this is a bit of my speculation, but I feel like it has very close conditions to form the hoodoos, but the rock is too soft. If you just look at this, like this section here, it's just, when it gets wet, it's like mud. Like it's just like flaking away. But you can still see the harder level here, and it's forming this fin. And even this guy right here, this looks like it's the concept of the hoodoo, where that hard level had protected it, and then, you know, that arch falls away, but it just seems it's too soft to stand on its own. But this guy, this pile, is like, that is hard rock. So the way that this happened, we're not entirely sure, which I love that. The fun thing about science is if you don't know, you don't pretend to know, you keep working on it. They have a general idea of what's going on, but they don't know exactly how it formed. So instead of being all these layers that piled up, this was sort of an anomaly. There was like a very soft layer. Let's do some sandstone here, and I'll make my brush a little wider. So we had, I think it's sandstone, but this soft red rock that is in Kodachrome Basin. And let's even say that there's a bit of that hard rock on top. This is not important to the story. But what is important is this pile. And this is sedimentary rock, which means that it's in water and there's a bunch of sediment, and through pressure it gets together and it forms. So this guy here is almost like rock concrete. It's a bunch of other stuff got pushed together and it makes it really hard. So they have two theories of how it got in there. One is that there was an earthquake and there was a crack in the top of this, and then water was able to flow in. Can we make that blue? Yeah, we can. You know, water flowed in this way and formed this little column here, and then all the sediment in it with the pressure started to coalesce there. The other theory, which I think is even more likely, just according to science that I was reading, is it was actually like a bunch of water pressure from below, and it actually like pushed up into here, and then same idea, the sediment in the water coalesced there and formed this like concrete pile. For the purposes of this video, it's not important to know which one what it was, but basically this layer formed way before that, and then later in the process water was forced in, and it's in some sort of vertical column, and the sediment in there condensed into sedimentary rock, and that is where you got those like columns there that are essentially naturally occurring concrete. So back to our original two pictures. This guy right here, it was a ton of rock, and it was eroding down, but this hard cap on the top protected the bottom part from eroding. It's still eroding, and it's going to erode a lot quicker than our pile. Our pile is like hard rock that thrust through this really soft layer. And here you can see, in this case, the entire soft layer is gone. That's eroded, but this guy is going to last not forever, but much longer than the other stuff that was gone, because it's just totally different rocks. Soft rock, hard rock, both forming columns. Geology is neat. Hopefully that made sense. If you have any questions, ask them in the comments, and I probably won't be able to answer them.